I just really want to thank you all for coming. This exhibition and having guest speakers here, this has just been a labor of love. And I truly appreciate each and every one of you taking the time out to come and view the exhibition and hear the incredible information that you're going to witness here by Ella Fitzgerald, one of our beloved Virginia natives. And I'm sure that you had an opportunity to, if you haven't, please take the time to see the exhibition and be wowed about all of the incredible talent. People from Richmond, from Virginia, from Alexandria, from Newport News, a lot of people from Newport News, Norfolk area. It must have been something in the water. But I'm telling you, it has just been incredible. We've been working on this exhibition since, I think, 2013, 2012, something like that. And we want to, first of all, thank the Valentine for giving us an opportunity to show and exhibit our exhibition. So please, thank you to the Valentine. And of course, we have several sponsors who we have to acknowledge. The Cabell Foundation, they believed in us when this was just all an idea that we went to them, and they said, okay, we want you to try it, give it a shot. So thank you to the Cabell Foundation, to Dominion Energy, and I know I'm leaving some others out, but make sure you get a brochure before you leave. And we have catalogs in the back. Take a catalog with you. They're only $10, but the catalogs are, it's just like having the exhibition with you. And I think that you'll be pleased to have that and have an opportunity to really digest the information, because there's a lot. My exhibition designer said, BJ, it's too much writing. Nobody's going to stop and read this. It's too much writing. So trust me, what you see, that's pared down. It's pared down. But you know, it's like, how can I leave this out? How can I not tell people about this contest, or not tell people about this wonderful woman who's from the Virginia area, changed her name in 1965, went to Europe, and now has a new name, has a new career, has sold over 500,000 albums over there. She's never been back. We don't know who she is. Her name is Selena Jones. So if you get an opportunity, please read about her, about Lonnie Liston Smith. A lot of people know who Lonnie is, lives here. And he is like a bridge, because young people are sampling his music, hip hop and rap. They are sampling Lonnie Liston Smith's music, and he lives right here in Richmond, was born right here in Richmond, Virginia. So you're gonna go from Bill Bojangles Robinson from the early 1900s all the way up to where we ended to the 1960s, the mid-60s, because those are the younger people, that's the generation that took the information from the tradition and put their own contemporary spin on it. And now they are influencing musicians today. So Virginia loves jazz, that's it. Virginia loves jazz, and thank you all for being here. So without further ado, Dr. John Edward Hasse does not need a huge introduction, because that's why we're here. We know him. He is so critically acclaimed all over the world, and we are just pleased, so very pleased that he wanted to come and share Ella Fitzgerald with us. And we're going to see rare footage. We're going to talk about how he's had an opportunity to meet Ella and speak with her. I'm so happy that I had an opportunity to hear her sing a couple of times, and just an incredible voice. That I don't know, we're all kind of up there in age. You remember that commercial? Is it Memorex or is it Ella? I can't ever forget that commercial. I can't ever forget that commercial. That's it, Dad. Hit it. Just don't break my glasses. But to know that she was from Virginia and she loved us all, and we love her madly. So ladies and gentlemen, please, a very warm Richmond welcome, Dr. John Edward Hasse.
Thank you, BJ, for that lovely introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So glad to see all of you out here this afternoon. And Will, could I get your help to put the audio into the side of the computer and open the shutter there? How about another hand for Wilton and Desiree? Go into hibernation. the Richmond Jazz Society and VJ for having me here, and to commend her and everybody who helped her put together this marvelous exhibit. This exhibit should go on the road. It's that good, and there's so much to the story, and so few people know about this story. So a hand for VJ and her team. I'd like to acknowledge friends who've come from near and far, and especially my in-laws from Suffolk and Portsmouth. The best mother and father-in-law I could have, Barbara, Mark, and a terrific uncle, Captain Richard, right here. And my wife, we got married a year ago. This is the woman I've been waiting for all my life, Sonia. Very big on music.
Hi, and welcome to Smithsonian Music. I'm David Scorton, and it's my privilege to serve as the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. I'm an amateur musician, and once had the honor of playing in the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks Orchestra. And who knows, perhaps someday they'll invite me back. Time will tell. In the meantime, I invite you to enter and explore all we have to offer in music here. If you put all the knowledgeable and talented music staff, collections, and programs together, the Smithsonian would be the world's largest museum of music. Our experts bring to life countless musical treasures, works of art, documents, and more than 15,000 instruments that tell the story of music from Appalachia to Zambia, from bebop to hip-hop, from Bach to the Beatles. It's all here, and we have ambitious plans to expand all we do. So, enjoy your time at this site, come back often to visit us, and let us know what you like. Now, back to practicing.
I don't know how you describe a person like that. What she does with her voice. So like an instrument.
This is Gillespie.
In my mind, Ella Fitzgerald made that first swing music.
Anita O'Day.
Well, you could sing anything. Anything that you decided to sing.
Benny Carter.
As well as anything else.
I'm waiting for the man. I'm waiting for the man I love.
Ella didn't know who she was.
She didn't have a clue. She didn't have a clue who she was. I'm telling you, man. I thought she'd tell her, say, you don't have any idea how great she was. She really didn't. She really didn't. She was amazing.
So Ella Fitzgerald was born April 25th, 1970, just over 100 years ago in the shipbuilding town of Newport News, Virginia. She had a rather rough childhood and adolescence. She had a step-pappy. She never knew her real father. When she was about 4, her mother and her step-pappy moved to Yonkers, New York. And this was a tough time to be African-American in the United States. A native Virginian, Woodrow Wilson, had this to say: segregation is not humiliating, but a benefit, and ought to be so regarded by you, gentlemen. And he's also the one who segregated the federal civil service. Now, About this time, radio was coming into its own. In 1920, radio station KDKA in Pittsburgh began broadcasting commercially. And pretty soon, every home had to have a radio. It was the poor man's phonograph because you just bought the equipment once, you didn't have to keep buying the software, the records. And this was also a period when the Great Migration was going on from the rural South to the urban North. Ella Fitzgerald, as a child, was part of this Great Migration going from not the rural South, but the urban South to the urban North. Here is Yonkers, New York, about the time that Ella Fitzgerald moved there in the early 20s. When she was 14, her mother died. Her stepfather abused her. She went to live with an aunt, but the aunt really was so busy, didn't have much time to take care of her. So Ella Fitzgerald was a truant. She was arrested and sent away to this juvenile detention center. She ran away from there. For a while she lived on the streets of Harlem, picking up money as she could, singing and dancing, even as a lookout for a house of ill repute, as they were called back then. She got herself into a wonderful opportunity by singing at the Apollo Theater. They held, starting in 1934, every Wednesday night, an amateur night, where if you were just nobody, you could compete to get a spot in amateur night and you might get discovered. She went through that process and got discovered. The audience was very critical there. They didn't like you, they'd boo you right off the stage. They were very discerning. One of her musical models was Connie Boswell out of New Orleans. And here she is talking about this.
Yeah, and I did that on a bet with two girlfriends of mine, Doris and Frances. And we all signed up, and I was the one that got called. And I was the first amateur out. And there was no way in the world I was going to try to follow those ladies. The man said, do something. And so I tried to sing like Miss Connie Boswell. And the only song I knew at that time was Object of My Affection. And somebody in the audience said, hey, that little girl can sing. And I won first prize.
She had gone out to dance, but she was just frozen with fear. Her knees knocked together, she couldn't dance, so that's when she tried to sing. And a good thing for us. The Savoy Ballroom, also in Harlem, was known as the home of happy feet. For 20, 30 years, it was where all the great modern dance steps came from. The world's finest ballroom. It filled an entire block. At one end was one stage, another was another stage. So when the band was taking a break, the other band could continue playing and the dancers could keep on dancing.
The guitar player with Chick Webb told Chick Webb about me, and he said he didn't want no girl singer. So he took me to Yale with the band, and he said, if they like her, okay. And at that time I had won about 4 or 5 amateur contests, so I sang the 3 numbers that I knew. Object of My Affection, Judy, and Believe It, Beloved. And at Yale, it was a prom, they liked me, so I got the job with the late Chick Webb.
And Chick Webb was from Baltimore, a little hunchback drummer, but an amazing musician, absolutely amazing musician, powering that swing band. And by the way, there's a wonderful documentary about him called The Savoy King, with the voices of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Cosby, Billy Crystal, Keith David, Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum, Janet Jackson, voicing Ella Fitzgerald, and I recommend this to you. So Chick Webb was the king of the Savoy Ballroom, and he took Ella Fitzgerald in there, and they made a great impression. In 1938, Ella took an old nursery rhyme she remembered from her childhood. She was just out of her teens at that point, added some words, got some help from a composer named Van Alexander, persuaded Chick Webb to record it, and it became a huge hit. Tisket a Tasket. Here it is on the Decca label. Here she shot to the top of the readers' poll in Downbeat magazine in 1938. She's #1, even ahead of Bing Crosby. And as the tune's most played on the air, it's #1. You can see it there, a Tisket a Tasket. It was so popular that she decided to try to write an answer song. I found my yellow basket. But this one, I'm like, I lost my yellow basket. Didn't go anywhere. And here she is a few years later in her first Hollywood motion picture appearance, singing a Tisket a Tasket. Now at this point she's 25, but she still has that girlish quality to her voice. And you'll notice in here where the filmmakers had her sit. The back of the bus. This was an Abbott and Costello Western comedy.
A tisket, a tasket, a brown and yellow basket. I sent a letter to my mommy. On the way I dropped it. I dropped it, I dropped it. Yes, on the way I dropped it. A little girlie picked it up and put it in the pocket. She was trucking on down the avenue, but not a single thing to do. She went backing all around. When she spied it on the ground, she took it, my little yellow basket. And if she doesn't bring it back, I think that I will die. Oh gee, I wonder where my basket can be.
Sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away.
Oh dear, I wish that little girl I could see.
Sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away.
Oh, why was I so careless with that basket of mine? That itty bitty basket was the joy of mine. Basket, I lost my yellow basket. Won't someone help me find my basket? Make me happy again.
Was it red?
No, 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 no.
Was it green?
No, 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 no.
Was it cerise?
No, just a little yellow basket. A little yellow basket.
Isn't that marvelous? A fully fledged talent already at that age, 25. By the way, she mentioned two dance steps of the period. She talked about trucking down the avenue. That was a dance step in the late 30s. And she'd go peck, peck, peckin'. Peckin' was also another dance step. These are Ella Fitzgerald's gifts. She had a warm, lovely voice, as you could just hear. She personalized her material so it didn't sound like anybody else's. She had a superb rhythmic sense and a great versatility of the kind of songs she recorded. She had tremendous vocal dexterity, meticulous intonation. Her pitch was right in the middle of the note. I never heard her sing even a little bit sharp or flat. It was on the spot. She could slow down or speed up the melody over a steady beat, a skill that Billie Holiday also demonstrated to great effect. She was a fine, natural melodist. When she would improvise, the lines were so beautiful they could have been published as melodies of their own. And she could improvise scat at the speed of thought, just as could a great jazz instrumentalist. And she had a large pitch range, at least 3.5 octaves. What a set of gifts, huh? Here she is with the Chick Webb Orchestra. However, in 1939, he died. It was a great loss for the music world, and she was now, and the band were put in the position of being in crisis. What would happen to the band? What would happen to Ella? Well, people were wondering, would Ella take over the Chick Webb Orchestra? She was the best-known member of the band, and she did take it over for several years. She fronted the band, as they call it then. And now in the 1940s, it was Decca Records, her record label, that dubbed her the First Lady of Song. And what an appropriate title, I think. Now, in the late 1940s, she had big ears. She was listening to the new bebop style of music that was coming from the nightclubs along 52nd Street in New York and from Harlem, listening to Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, and others. And they had quite an effect on her.
Well, I showed her the way that I played, you know, the style of bebop, how I played, and she just picked up on it. She could do the same thing, you know, just like she'd make a phrase, and we'd make a phrase at the exact same. She's phenomenal.
Dizzy Gillespie.
And that's how I became what you call a bebop singer, because I used to follow Dizzy Gillespie. I always say that was my teacher in bebop.
Were it not for Dizzy, there would have been no bebop. Oh, he just played it, he did it, and everybody loved it, and, you know, tried to emulate it or duplicate it.
By the way, the picture that you saw with the hat on at the beginning of that clip, that was taken by Bill Gottlieb, then from Washington, D.C., and then New York City. His pictures are now housed at the Library of Congress, and his widow, Delia Gottlieb, lived here until she passed away earlier this year. And his daughter, Barbara, still lives in Richmond. She wanted to come, but was unavailable this afternoon. Here she is at the Downbeat Club in 1949 in New York City, and behind her is her then husband, Ray Brown, and here she is also at the Downbeat Club. Look who's sitting admiring her. That's Duke Ellington, and to his right, or your right, Benny Goodman. Look at the infatuation in Ellington's eyes. It wasn't romantic, it was musical and spiritual. Here she is with that same hat. This is the one that shot by William Gottlieb. Dizzy mooning over her, and that's Ray Brown behind her on bass. So here we are in the 1950s, and she's now down in Houston, and she's backstage playing a harmless game of dice with some of the band members, and the police bust into her dressing room and arrest her for playing dice. And they had the nerve to ask her for her autograph. And here the customs people made a big hassle over her. But Marilyn Monroe came to her rescue. The Combo Club in Hollywood was, by some consideration, the #1 nightclub in Hollywood. You couldn't be a person of color and perform there. So Marilyn Monroe was a fan of Ella's, and she told the management that if they allowed Ella to sing there, Marilyn would come in every night and sit in the front row and bring them a lot of attention. And they did, and she did. This is Norman Granz, a concert producer, starting in Los Angeles in the late 40s, and bring various musicians together and tour them under the name Jazz at the Philharmonic. And what was one of the things that was so remarkable about him was he insisted wherever his performers go that the audiences be integrated. He would not take his players into any place where there was segregation going on. And he was very stand up for that, so much so that the biography of him is called Norman Granz, the man who used jazz for justice. He also in the 1950s started a stable of record labels. Norgran and Verve were among them, and he signed Ella to record for him, and they came up with a great concept, to take the wonderful repertory of the great songwriters of the United States and put them into the series of songbook recordings. Ella Fitzgerald sings the Cole Porter songbook. They ended up doing 9 of these songbooks. And these recordings, which were clearly a very strong concept, along with Frank Sinatra was doing at the time for Capitol Records, also singing a series of concept albums, like Songs for Swinging Lovers or Only the Lonely. These songs, well, these albums both became very influential as among the first of these concept albums. She got to work with the great arranger Nelson Riddle, who also worked with Sinatra and Nat King Cole, on 3 of these songbook albums, including the great George and Ira Gershwin songbook, largely, widely considered her best of all the songbook albums. Now, we don't have any video of her performing with Nelson Riddle conducting the orchestra, but here is Gershwin's "Oh, Lady Be Good." This is from a 1968 television special, and you're going to see her in her backyard, and you're going to see a couple people from Washington, D.C. Keeter Betts and Duke Ellington.
Now about music. I love the way it was just a trio. But of course it's got to be a swinging trio, like Keeter Betts on bass, Louis Bellson on drums, and on piano, my own Duke.
Sweet, lovely, lady be good. Oh, lady be good. Oh, lady, oh, lady, oh, lady be good to me. Saying I'm all alone in this big city of LA. Won't somebody please answer me? Pity, pity, pity on me. Just lonesome lady, bathed in the woods. Oh, lady, oh, lady, oh, lady be good to me.
You know, that's such a great clip, and it's so unusual for Ellington to be playing Gershwin, because Ellington was his own great composer. He wrote about 1,500 pieces. We have all his music at the Smithsonian, 100,000 pages of his unpublished music. And he normally played his own music, so this was something that Ella wanted him to do, so he was game and played Gershwin. Now this is the Duke Ellington songbook of Ella Fitzgerald's. And you know, a few people you might hear say, well, Ella could sing just about everything, but she really wasn't so good at singing the blues. That's not true. That's not true, as this next example proves.
Thank you and hello, bonsoir. And we hope you enjoy the songs we've chosen. We'd like to do a number for you now written by the one and only, the greatest, the Duke of Ellington. We hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Tom Flanagan, piano, Keeter Betts, bass.
Ain't got the change of a nickel. Ain't got no bounce in my shoes. Ain't got no fancy to tickle I ain't got nothing but the blues. Ain't got no coffee that's working. Ain't got no women in to lose. Ain't got a dream that's working. I ain't got nothing but the blues. When troubles flare up, I keep my hair up. I just can't keep it down. Believe me, Pappy, I can't stay happy since my ever-loving baby left town. Ain't got no sleep in my slumber. Ain't got no feelings through. Ain't got a telephone number. I ain't got nothing but the blues. Ain't got the change of a nickel. Ain't got no bounce in my shoe. Ain't got no fancy to tickle. I ain't got nothing but the blues. Ain't got no coffee that's working. Ain't got no women in to lose. Ain't got a lot of drinking that's working. I ain't got nothing but the blues. When troubles flare up, I keep my head up. I just can't keep it down. Believe me, Pappy, I can't stay happy since my ever-loving baby left town. Ain't got no sleep in my slumber. Ain't got no ain't got no telephone number. I ain't got nothing but the blues. No, I ain't. I ain't got nothing but the blues.
So what do you think of that, Desiree? It was the New York Times columnist Frank Rich writing about Ella Fitzgerald's songbook series, who said, she performed a cultural transaction as extraordinary as Elvis's contemporaneous integration of white and African-American soul. Here was a black woman popularizing urban songs, often written by immigrant Jews, to a national audience of predominantly white Christians. As Ira Gershwin said, in the line quoted in every obituary of him, I never knew how good our songs were until I heard Ella Fitzgerald sing. Most of the rest of us don't know either. By the time she had gone through the entire canon, songs that had been pigeonholed as show tunes or jazz novelties or faded relics of Tin Pan Alley had become American classical music, the property and pride of everyone. One of her great musical partners and dear friends was Louis Armstrong. They recorded several albums together, including their own version of Porgy and Bess. I highly commend this to you. And it was right after Louis Armstrong made a hit of an old song from the late 20s, Mac the Knife, from the Three Penny Opera by Kurt Weill, and original German lyrics by Bertolt Brecht. Louis Armstrong made a hit of this, and so did Bobby Darin. But Ella was at the Berlin Jazz Festival, and in the middle of this, which was kind of new to her, she forgot the lyrics. She completely forgot the lyrics and had to fake her way through the rest of the song. And it was put on an album, and it's one of her most enduring. And here she is. There's the album, Mac the Knife, Ella in Berkeley. And here she is in Stockholm, Sweden, reprising Mac the Knife.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, the shot has curly teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has Mac Heath, dear, and he keeps it out of sight. When the shark bites with his teeth, dear, scarlet billows start to spread. Fancy clouds flow with Mac Heath, dear. So there's not a trace of red on the sidewalk on a Sunday morning. Somebody oohs and light. Someone sneaking round that corner. Tell me, could it be Mac the Knife? On a tugboat down by the river, don't you know? A cement bag drop up and down. Cement just for the weight, dear. Bet you that cat called Mackie, old Mackie's back in town. Ah, Louis Miller, that caddy disappeared, dear, after drawing out
What a performance. You could see she was having the time of her life, and she was really, really comfortable at that time on stage with all her hand movements, you know, mimicking the gloves and all of that. Just marvelous. Is it Ella or Memorex? How many of you remember this? Most of you, okay. Memorex in the 1970s hired her to be a celebrity spokesperson, and they did both a print ad and a television ad for her. Here it is.
Can the amplified voice of Ella Fitzgerald shatter this glass? Believe it. Ella Fitzgerald on Memorex cassette tape with MRX2 oxide. Can Memorex shatter the glass? Now we ask, is it mine or is it Memorex?
She also was a celebrity spokesperson for American Express cards, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. Now, Frank Sinatra had a series of TV specials in the 1960s. He was a huge admirer of Ella Fitzgerald. They do this medley together, and you know, Sinatra back in the 50s and 60s was kind of, you know, Mr. Cool. He's not Mr. Cool here, he's really into it. You can see he's just crazy about Ella and performing with her.
The way you sip your tea,
A cup of tea suits me.
the memory of all that.
Don't quit now.
No, no, they can't take that away from me.
The way your smile just beats.
Do tell, do tell.
The way you sing on key.
I ain't feeling that.
The way you haunt my dreams.
Tell me more.
No, no, they can't take that away from me.
We may never, 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 never meet again on that bumpy road to love.
But I'll always, 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 always keep a memory of
The way you hold me all night,
one empty past for two.
the way we danced until
Or the frugal boogaloo.
the way you changed my life.
Tonight you changed my
No,
tune.
no, they can't take that away from me.
No, they can't take that away.
No, they can't take that away.
No, they can't take
That away from me. Savoy,
almost sweet romance.
Savoy,
Savoy
Went to
ballroom.
that at a glance.
Savoy,
His happy whole feet a dance.
Savoy.
Each note is warm as
In
wine.
my eyes,
I know the way they shine.
you rest, I grab another line.
That's fine, that's fine.
How my heart is swaying, babe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How my heart is swaying while the band is playing.
I never tire of it and stopping with you at this voice.
Savoy,
A perfect holiday
Savoy,
where we can dance and
got a good
sway
thought. What joy
until the break of day.
with you.
Boy, Sinatra was over the moon, and you can see why. Wow. Really great chemistry between the two of them. Now, we're going to hear another clip from the Sinatra special. This is from 1967. And this one is a textbook example of melisma, what musicians call melisma. And I cannot sing a note, but if I could, it would be something like a tiska task. It's the singing of one syllable over multiple notes or pitches. And in this, you're going to hear her do melisma after melisma as brilliantly as I've heard any singer ever improvise. It's just an amazing performance of Don't Be That Way, another swing era anthem. And if I were consigned to a desert island for the rest of my life, and I can only take 10 video clips, this would be one of them. Again, I think we're going to hear, we're not seeing, but I think we're going to hear Peter Betts on bass. You're going to hear a really nice solid bass. My old friend Peter. Russell, you knew him.
Your turn.
Even though I could dance. Don't cry. Oh, honey, please don't be that way. Clouds in the sky should never make you feel that way. The rain will bring the violets of May. Tears are in vain, so honey, please don't be that way. As long as we see it through, you have me, I'll have you, sweetheart. Tomorrow is another day. Don't break my heart. Oh, honey, please don't be that way. Don't you cry. Honey, don't be that way. Clouds in the sky should never make you feel that way. But we're gonna we'll bring the violets someday. Tears are in vain, so honey, don't be that way. As long as we see you
Wow. Before I forget, I want to acknowledge two dear friends who are amazing musicians. Russell Wilson and Doug Richards. Wow. Doug will be giving a lecture in this series, so you want to be sure to come back and hear Doug. Do you know the date, BJ?
March 27th.
Be here. Okay. Okay. Now we're coming to the next to the last track here. This is rather a rarity because well, now bossa nova was the rage in the United States and other parts of the world in the early 60s. It came out of Brazil, emerging of cool American jazz with the samba beat. But you don't usually hear scat singing on bossa nova. It's not that common. But Ella, she does it. And this is just an extraordinary performance. It's over 6 minutes long. You're going to hear Keter Betts on bass, Tommy Flanagan again on piano. And you're not really going to get into the lyrics of this. She scats just about the whole thing, and she makes some sounds that I would have trouble transcribing. It's not even a syllable. It's just one of these extraordinary performances. So without further ado, let's listen to Ella interpret One Note Song.
Merci.
one no sound about
Have you ever heard scat singing like that before? Wow. This is Ella Fitzgerald. She came to the museum where I worked for 33 years in 1989 to get an award from the Capital City Jazz Festival. And I got a chance to meet and visit with her. That's me. It's one of my favorite pictures, and I hadn't seen this picture ever until a couple of weeks ago. Wow, that was a nice surprise. Well, the Ella Fitzgerald was pretty soon suffering from terrible diabetes. She had to have both her legs amputated, and she had serious vision problems. In her home, in Beverly Hills, she installed one of those gliding elevators that glides up the stairs, a kind of chairlift, not an elevator. And she wasn't performing, obviously, in public at that time. And in 1996, we lost her. A couple months later, I get a phone call. I'm in my office, minding my own business, and I get a phone call from a man identifying himself as Richard Rossman, her attorney. There he is some years later. And he said, "Would you be interested in Ella Fitzgerald's archives?" Would we? I said. So 3 of us curators and archivists went out. We made actually 2 trips to go through everything in her office and her house. The family wanted us to go through everything. And we did. And they gave us the pick of what she had. In the living room, we were just about finished, and there was this little end table about this high. And there was a small drawer, and it was stuck. So I gave it a great big yank, and all these papers popped out and fell on the floor. There in the back of the drawer was an envelope, and I pulled it out. It was a number 10 business envelope addressed to Ella Fitzgerald. And it was from the Smithsonian. I thought, who wrote her? So I opened it up, looked at the letter. It was from me. I'd written her 6 years earlier and never heard back from her. I invited her to donate something and never heard back from her, so I'd forgotten about it. And she didn't. She told her attorney, Richard Rossman, that when she was gone, she wanted her things to go to the Smithsonian. So from that, one takeaway I have is you never know the power of a single letter. And even more so, I think, today, when very few people write letters. So we got 60 cubic feet of archival material and even more than that of what we call 3-dimensional artifacts. This painting of her was done by, it's signed Benedetto. Does anybody know who that really is?
Tony Bennett.
Tony Bennett. Very fine artist. We have 5 of her 13 Grammys, including her first Grammy and her last Grammy. We have this boxed set of keys to cities. This is the NAACP award given to her. I love this statue of our dear friend Louis Armstrong, even if one of the hands is broken off. And she was a huge fan of baseball, San Francisco Giants, Willie Mays, Los Angeles Dodgers, and we have a number of baseballs that were autographed to her from the Dodgers and the All-Star teams. This is her American Express card. Member since this is from 1961. The ad says member since 1961. And this famous picture by Annie Leibovitz was used for an American Express card print ad. We have the red Don Loper suit, the red hat, the white glasses, and the leopard skin coat. We didn't get the convertible. And we have a number of wonderful photographs of her. This by the great Herman Leonard from New Orleans. Mike, you knew Herman Leonard. Yeah, he's just an incredible photographer, dear, dear friend. And every year, the Smithsonian puts out a poster for Jazz Appreciation Month. Anybody know what month that is? April. Good, good, you're hip. And this is the image we put on in 2008. And we just opened a few months back this exhibition on her, Ella Fitzgerald at 100. It was my honor, privilege to curate this exhibition, and in it you'll see sheet music, recordings, program booklets, a letter that she wrote to Pearl Bailey. Here is the ribbon just before we cut the ribbon. There's that Don Loper suit. You see the keys to the cities in the back. And here we are about to cut the ribbon for the opening. That's third from the left to Fran Morris Rotzman, who runs the foundation. And fifth from the left, next to me is Richard Rotzman, who is her attorney. Now we're going to play, and many of the artifacts you saw just a moment ago are in that exhibition. It's open, our museum is open every day of the year except Christmas. It's free of charge. You don't have to register in advance. The exhibit will close next April 30th, so it's on display for over a year through her entire 100th birthday year. And if you haven't come to Washington, please come up and see the exhibit. We're going to play one last track of Ella's. This is a really fun track from 1979. And she's with Count Basie about 5 years before he passed. You can see he's getting up there in years, but his spirit lives on. There she is in this picture with Nat King Cole, Count Basie, and Joe Williams. And they're all having a great time, including the bass player. And you can see they're pretty much making this up. I'm not even sure they had any rehearsal because she asked them twice, where does this go? This is in the great spirit of jazz.
Hey, Basie, how about your theme song? Yeah.
Truly amazing, truly amazing. I'd like to invite you to visit two of our websites, music.si.edu, to find out about music all over the whole Smithsonian, and to find out about jazz, our jazz orchestra, with whom Russell played for many years, Russell Wilson, oral histories, all sorts of information, smithsonianjazz.org. And I want to thank you for being such a great audience. And I think, BJ, you want to see if there's some questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's turn this on.
Yeah, we can turn someone turn the lights up a little bit. So I know that there are a lot of questions. I have a quick question. That last cut with her, Count Basie, who was on bass? Henry Franklin? Do you remember the bass player? Oh, maybe Ellie Young, because I heard her say Ellie Young.
L.D. Young. Yeah, he used to be with Ramsey Lewis.
Oh,
Ramsey
Ramsey Lewis Trio.
Right.
That was Ellie Young. Okay, I learned something. Thank you. Questions?
Questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I understand that Ella had a perfect pitch, and the musicians usually tune their instruments by her pitch. Is that true?
I've not heard that before, but it wouldn't surprise me because her pitch was unbelievable. I mean, just uncannily right in the middle of the note. Really extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Miles.
Yes.
Where is she buried?
She is buried in L.A. Yes, she's buried in L.A. Yeah.
But there's an Ella Fitzgerald Foundation. You can join their Facebook page, and almost every day you get something new. Today we're celebrating chocolate cake, so they'll play something by Ella. So if you on Facebook, join the Ella Fitzgerald Foundation, and I think you'll be very, very pleased with what they have on.
More questions? Vicki.
So this is the first time I've seen so many clips of her singing. She seems very, in the present, very joyful. She's, even when she's singing the blues, she seems to be loving what she's doing. How was her personal life? I hope it was happy. I mean, she seems like such a great person that you would, obviously her colleagues loved her, and she just seemed to just draw people in.
Thank you, Vicki. Vicki is the former voice of the Smithsonian. If you call the Smithsonian, you get Vicki's number on the answer machine. And my former neighbor. That's a good question. The first 20 years of her life almost were really difficult. I mean, having a stepfather who abused her and having her mother die and leave her an orphan. And when she was living on the streets of Harlem, it was really rough. She had trouble finding a place to sleep or to even take a bath, and it was really tough. Later on, she had a great deal of success and happiness, but she never talked about those early years. Her biographers have had to look very, very hard to find out information about that early time. And she talked about winning the amateur night contest in Havana, the Apollo Theater and Savoy Ballroom in Chippewa, but she didn't talk about the problems and the challenges and the troubles and the heartache and the sadness or the abuse. She really covered that over. I think it was probably too painful, and perhaps she was also too private a person to get into that. She was married for a couple of years to the bassist Ray Brown, and they had a son, Ray Brown Jr., but she was on the road so much that her sister pretty much raised him. When we went to her home after she died, he was there, Ray Brown Jr., to say, look at this, look at that, go out to the backyard. We went to that backyard. You could just see that one video clip of her with Ellington, their cabana back there. We went and looked there, listening to the collection that was saying that we went all over the house. And she had a very peripatetic life, but she got incredibly deep and powerful satisfaction from making the music and collaborating with these brilliant musicians like Tommy Flanagan and Peter Betts, who were accompanist for years and years and years. And then there's rare opportunities to work with people like Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Nelson Riddle, Frank Sinatra, and from her adoring fans. And you know, I've been all over the world, and I've talked to a lot of people. I've never found somebody who says, I hate Ella Fitzgerald. There are people who don't like rock and roll, country, Sinatra, you name it, but I don't think there's anybody who dislikes Ella Fitzgerald. Her appeal is pretty much universal. Whether you're a diehard jazz fan, whether you're interested in a great American songbook, whether you're just interested in brilliant music and singing, she appeals across all demographics, I think. It's pretty much universal, and that's a rare quality. Very rare. More questions? Yes, sir.
Obviously, her singing voice was her instrument, but did she have any actual musical instrument training, or did she play an instrument?
Not that I know of. I mean, she may have played a little bit of piano, but nothing like, say, Dizzy Gillespie, who actually played a decent piano. Yes.
Just to follow that up, could she read music?
Yes. Yes. Good. I thought I'd just say a couple words about Duke Ellington, since we saw him perform with her, and he wasn't from all that far away, 100 miles away, Washington, D.C. I like to think of him as the city's greatest native son. Spent the first third of his 75 years in his hometown. Before he left Washington for good in 1924, he actually performed a number of times in Virginia. He took the train down to Ashland to do a country club gig there as a solo pianist, and the man who had booked him, Lewis Thomas, said, bring back the $100. Ellington did, and gave Ellington 10, kept 90. And after that, Ellington didn't want to work with a booking agent. He booked himself. He also played in, before he left Washington, so this would have been the late teens, early 20s, for out in the Virginia countryside, for fox hunt balls and barn dances, and Orange, Culpeper, Warrenton, Middleburg, places like that. And then I did some research. This is a topic for another lecture and maybe even an exhibit, but Duke Ellington in Virginia. But 1935, he performed in Richmond. He came here about 10 or 12 times, all the way up into the 70s. Once he performed his sacred concert here at the mosque.
At the mosque.
Mosque, right? I can tell you the names of some of the other places he played, if you're interested. He went all over the state. He was in
Richmond.
Pardon me?
In Richmond, City Stadium.
Yeah, in just a moment, I'll mention some of these other places. He played in 1935, that was in March, at the Tantilla Gardens. Later that year at the Hippodrome Theater. 1944 at the Mosque Auditorium. He played again in 1947 in Richmond. 1951 at the Mosque. 1966 at the Sahara Club. And back at the Mosque in 68 and in 71 at the City Stadium. 10,000 people turned up in the afternoon. It was a 2 o'clock show. He was there with Carmen McRae, and then Bob Hope was also in the bill. He also performed multiple times in Norfolk, Newport News, Virginia Beach, Hampton, Lexington, Arlington, Alexandria, Roanoke, and at Hopewell at Virginia State, now listed as being in Petersburg. So there's a real story there of Duke Ellington in Virginia. More questions? Yes, with the great back.
I noticed that Ella did collaborate with how about any of the female jazz singers like Sarah Vaughan or any of those folks here? So that did any collaboration or concerts?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear everything. Did the museum collect any?
No. Did she collaborate with any female vocalists? We see footage of
Right.
her with the male vocalists, were there any female vocalists? I think there were some specials on TV that
Yeah.
sometimes there would be other vocalists with her, but I don't know of any album collaborations.
No albums. But she was friendly with Pearl Bailey. And there is a letter between them that's on display in our exhibit. Pearl Bailey was married, of course, to Louis Bellson.
And it's from Virginia.
Yes, right. Any more questions? Well, you have just been a marvelous audience, and I want to thank the Richmond Jazz Society and VJ again for inviting me here. And VJ would like me to announce that over here at this table, we'll be doing a book signing of my biography of Duke Ellington called Beyond Category, The Life and Genius of Duke Ellington, with a foreword by Wynton Marsalis, and a couple copies left of Jazz of the First Century, which is an illustrated history of music with forwards by Quincy Jones and Tony Bennett. And thanks again. You've been a great audience. Keep swinging.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Dr. John Edward Hasse. Before you go, I have a shameless plug. April 25th, this past year, April 25th, Richmond Jazz Society presented with Virginia Repertory Theater a production, Ella at 100, and it starred Desiree Rubinstein. It was a multimedia production. There were slides of Ella with gorgeous gowns, and Desiree would come out with a gown that was prepared especially for her with that same kind of feel that you saw on the slide. Well, we're going to do that concert again. So it's Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, who did I leave out? Nat King Cole, and 17-piece orchestra at the American Theater in Hampton, Virginia, February 25th of 2018. So 2 shows, you know the times, 4 and 7? 2 and 7, 2 shows, 2 and 7. So that's a heads up for next year, February 22nd. We'll be doing, I'm sorry, what is it? 25th. How come I can't get that? February 25th. Okay, the American Theater in Hampton, Virginia. So put that on your calendar. If you didn't get a chance to see that production, please make sure you put in your schedule to see it. It is exquisite, and you know Desiree can do her thing. So thank you again. Don't forget, we have catalogs in the back. When you support us by purchasing those catalogs, that helps us to do it again. So thank you so much. We love you madly. Please go over and meet Dr. John, pick up a book, and get your autographs. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again. Take time to see the exhibit. If you haven't seen it, please come back. Bright moments, and thank you.